go dial in. So, Paul, all right, so here's one, and I want to bounce this off of you because it relates kind of to the way a book that I read that was written I don't know when it was written, in the 40s or something, maybe in the 50s, but Starship Troopers. I'll have to find out by Robert Heinlein. And they made a movie about it, and then it became like a CGI. It became a CGI franchise. So they have all these Starship Troopers movies, but the movies are kind of way different than the book. But one of the things in the book was that you couldn't vote unless you would complete.
The military makes you a citizen. Yes.
Yeah, military, federal. They're calling federal service, but. You know, you had to join the military. You had to do your term of service, and then you can vote because now you had skin in the game, right? You had skin in the game. So, if you're incapable of serving in the military, because then you're incapable of being in the militia, and if you're incapable of being in the militia, are you considered the people? And should you have the right to bear arms then? I'm not talking if you served or not. I'm talking about your ability to serve.
You know, in that one, no. But in that film, they were also, unless you were dead, you know, because they could regenerate your body parts. But you know, you bring up an excellent point, and I've said this a lot, and it goes to your idea of citizenship and the ultimate duty of a citizen. You know, when you work as a prosecutor, and I got into a discussion with somebody online about this just the last week, and it's an important thing to remember. When you serve as a prosecutor, one of your duties is to go out on election day. They give you a list, and you usually get sent either by ward or area. And you have to go into polling places, and you have to make sure that they're run properly, okay? And I remember my friend who recently died. He was in a band. It was a great musician, John, and we had to go out to a polling place in like basically Crestwood, and the machines come from Cook County, you know, and it was a joke I made. The woman said they opened up the machine and all these ants were coming in, and I said to her, "You call Board of Elections and you tell them that you don't want any Chicago ants." You know, it was a joke, but besides that, I learned something really important on an election day. So I had been working election days for almost 10 years. So I worked 20 elections. And then I transferred to the state's attorney's office. And they don't know what your history is. So they make you work in a nursing home. And I worked in a nursing home a couple of days before the election. They let them vote there. And you could actually see 26th Street from the windows of the nursing home. And a friend of mine, who's now an Episcopalian priest down in Springfield, he was one of our investigators. And we were there all day. And there was a kid that he wasn't really a kid. He was maybe 20, 25, but he was mentally challenged, you know. And as we sat in the hall and watched, every couple of minutes, the guy would change his clothes. He'd put on a different shirt, he'd come back, then he'd stand around, and then he'd leave. And then he'd come back and he had a different pair of pants on. Then he'd stand around, then he'd leave. Then he came back, and then he had a hat on. And then he stood around, and then he left. And he did this for like almost the entire 8 hours I was there. So finally a nurse walked in there, and I'll just make up a name, it's not his name. She said, "Hey, Ronnie, what are you doing?" And you know what Ronnie said? He said, "I'm trying to look good because this is the only day that I'm a real person and I matter." And you know something? Ronnie might have been mentally challenged, but Ronnie was the smartest person in the world that day because he knew it. Voting is very important. No matter who you vote for or what you vote for, it's your chance to make your statement. Even if you're just one of 50,000 voting the same way. Because if you didn't have that chance, we wouldn't be a free country right now. And then we wouldn't be talking about the Second Amendment. We wouldn't be talking about the military, and we wouldn't be talking about police and fire and freedom. And so it is the Second Amendment is tied to everything because it's tied to voting. It's tied to freedom. It's tied to expression. And Ronnie knew that. And until that day, I really didn't realize it, that Ronnie was right. And so that's why it's important to have a Second Amendment, because it ensures that we all have a voice. Because if we didn't have a voice, then we would just be like Russia or China or under a dictatorship, and we're not.
Okay, do you think the state of Illinois would have issued Ronnie a FOID card?
They wouldn't, and
well, that's a shame because they let him vote.
That's the sad thing.
They let him vote. Here's with voting, and it's important in one way, and like, not to be political, but in some ways we need a third party, but the reason being is because the left can always count on a certain percentage of votes, no matter what they do, no matter how bad they are. There's so many guys that are like, well, my father was this, my grandfather was this, and I don't care if they changed any, I'm going to be that, and I'm just going to vote the party line. The other side, the right is the same way, right? And the only ones these groups catered to are the fringe groups. That 2% that's going to shift the vote, right? That's going to shift the polling. If you scream at these fringe special interest groups, if you say what they want to hear, they're going to go and vote hopefully with your party to keep you in charge, right? You might not even be sincere about that, about anything that you're saying to them. You could be totally insincere, but if you could convince them, right, you don't have to worry about these other guys like a lot of, like Chicago, Roman Catholic, right? Hardcore Roman Catholic, consistently votes with the party that supports abortion. I'm like, that's like a shocker to me, right? And you got people like, Joe Biden. He don't care. I'm sorry, I meant the politician name. I apologize. But you got Roman Catholic politicians that vote against their own religion, absolutely vote against it. But they don't care because they're trying to get the fringe group in so that they can stay in power. All right. So, but yeah, voting is important because if you're
the thing that always got me, and women believe in women's rights, and I understand their belief in that. The thing that got me, though, that I never, and I brought this up with some relatives of mine, the thing that got me the most is, we're a group and we're a bunch of voters, and we everybody, because we're one of the states now that doesn't, we vote against the death penalty, okay, and we don't have a death penalty yet. What's more innocent than a child before it's born? Yet we don't protect.
That's what you call hypocrisy, Paul.
Right.
It's hypocrisy. Now here.
And somebody looked at me, it was actually a relative of mine, and they looked at me like I had a lobster coming out of my head, and they said, well, because the killer he's a person, he's born. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's the fringe explanation. That person's a person at the moment of conception. Period. It has the DNA. Has a full set of DNA. All right. Is a boy or a girl already? Right. That is a person. That is a unique person. Unless they're they're identical twins, but then they'll have different fingerprints. So they're not really that identical. All right.
Right.
Yes. All right. So you got to have some consistency here. I am so pro-life that I'm completely anti-death penalty. Absolutely anti-death penalty. One, because our prisons are underutilized. Now, you could argue with me, but I think that 6 murderous guys that we have absolute proof that they murdered people and killed them and everything, and their lawyers said that they were harmless as a puppy. This is all misunderstanding, or, they wouldn't have done it, but they were driven to it, and we'll put them 6 to a cell. Hey, how we know? His lawyer said he was harmless, and then he killed the other 5 people in the cell. How would we know? He said he was harmless. Anyways, that's underutilized, right? And no, because here, and we're getting a little off subject, but again, all right, so the militia, what do you want to do? If you don't have children, sooner or later, you have to import a workforce. If you don't make babies to take the job that you're too old to do, right? Then you got to get these workers from somewhere if you don't make them into robots, right, Paul?
Right.
And are they going to be as loyal to your country, having just coming in, being here first generation, as a person his family lived here for 10 generations and doesn't know anything else? There's the confusion there. So when you support this, you're destroying your own country. I'm not saying that many immigrants, extremely loyal to, they come over here and that's it. This is their first loyalty. Absolutely. They came in and this is it, right? When I was in the military and applying to go to the language school, I had my commander said, well, you're of Polish heritage, so we can't send you for Polish because, you might not fight against your relatives. I'm like, I'll fight against them. I don't know them. I've never been over to Poland at the time, right? The last person in Poland was my grandmother, and she wasn't even born there. She went to visit old relatives, right? So what I'm saying is you start encouraging this amongst your own citizens, for whatever reason, live a better life, not have the children, everything. That's destroying your militia, all right? Your depth of defense. You're getting a lower and lower population. Right? Lower and lower population. And we've seen it where even some elected officials who came over here as immigrants, as refugees, and now got elected to office, are stating that their first priority isn't the United States, that it's the country they came from, that they fled from. And they're saying that openly. And I'm like, how do they keep getting elected? Well, it's what you said about voting, Paul. If you have, I tell all my Legion members and everything, all the veterans I know, you better register to vote. Not only register to vote, you better go out and vote. When I go to vote in Chicago, right, I go out there, primaries, right? Oh, well, I want to vote with this party. You get a red line under your name. I'm going to vote with this party. You get a blue line under your name. And that goes to the alderman. He knows what party you're affiliated with now. So when you call him for help, hopefully you got the same party, right? But when I go in for the general election, right, they know I voted. So I'm on that list, right? And, I'm a veterans list. If you see all these veterans that are voting, right, that are sending you letters, and they're always going out to vote, and you got like 90% of the veterans vote in your district, right? They're all voting. Well, you're going to listen to what they want because they're going to either vote for you or against you. But if you don't have, if your congressional district is only getting in a 10% vote count, 10% of the people that are eligible to vote go on and vote, right? Do you think the party cares about anything other than your vote? They don't care about your pork. You're only bringing 10% in the vote. They don't care about giving you anything for your district. They'll give it to the other districts where people are screaming for it, where they want those votes, right?
Yep.
For the state. so they could carry the state for the presidential election. They won't give anything to your district, but the district that gets 99% of their people out, they're going to give them everything. So the vote is not just important because it's important because it shows your power, right? It shows the power of your area. It shows that you're concerned and that you're watching, that you're visible. I don't have my phone, I don't have my face stuck in a TikTok video all the time. I'm seeing what's happening out there. I'm a little involved. I'm involved enough to vote, right? Should be involved enough to at least vote, right? But here's where we go again. If you don't have any skin in the game, if you're never gonna have to put your butt on the line to bleed blood in a foreign country, bleed your own blood in a foreign country, all right? To lose something over there and lose time, lose your job back at home, use blood. Yes, there is the Soldiers and Sailors Act, but there's a lot of abusers of that too. But if you're not at least willing to go over there, at least willing to keep yourself in shape and everything, to go over there, to lay your stuff on the line, should you be able to vote for a guy who's going to send everyone else to war? Well, it don't matter to me. I'm a conscientious objector. I'm conscientious. I won't kill anyone because I don't want to be killed, but I'll vote to send everyone else over there to kill because they're psychopaths. That's all they want to do. And his vote is as good as yours. Where does the guy's got no skin in it. He doesn't intend to ever fight, but he's going to vote for someone that's going to send us to war. That's where the thing is, right? And they say, well, that's fascism. Only having party members or whatever be able to vote. It's like, well, you got skin in the game, but even then, these guys, you were made a member of the party so that you could keep yourself out of it or in the back lines or in the air-conditioned offices directing the fighting while everyone else dies. The peasants die, right?
Yeah.
I think that's just human nature. I think you can't get beyond that, right? I think that's going to be in every government. People are going to look out. No one's altruistic. Everyone's going to look out for their own best interest first. Oh, we got a caller on the line. That's 2. Hi, how you doing?
Hey, Mike, this is Jeff from Cleveland, Ohio.
Hey, Jeff.
I was hoping to have been there in the studio with you this weekend, but the trip didn't work out. But great show so far.
Okay. Jeff was with me at the language school when I wasn't learning Polish.
Yeah, we were in the Czech basic course together. And then I went on to graduate from the intermediate and advanced, and then you went back to DLI a couple of years later for Russian, right?
Yeah. So now, Jeff, you're like a good example of this, right? So Jeff did something unknown. I mean, really focused guy. He finished 3 courses in the same time it took the rest of us slower people to do 1, right? And then Jeff was the soldier of the cycle. Soldier of the Year for the 2nd PSYOP group, all right? Soldier of the Year. They offered him promotion and everything to stay in. But Jeff did his 6 years. And what did you do, Jeff?
I went into stand-up comedy.
Yeah, he went into a legitimate field, right? But Jeff did his service, right? Jeff's dad made up for all of us. He made up for all of us in the service, If you could... And man, in the Civil War, right? Guys were getting drafted into the Civil War. And they were paying guys to do their service for them. And that was okay. That was okay. They paid this guy to do the service. Then the guy would do the service, and then he would get drafted. So he'd do it twice. But Jeff's dad was in for like ever. And
he retired as a Master Sergeant Food Service, E8. And when he passed away 3 years ago, we had his service at the Ohio Western Reserve Military Cemetery in Seville, Ohio. It's a rather new national cemetery, and it's absolutely beautiful. His brother served in the Army. He's a couple of sections down, and then my godparents on my mom's side are buried there as well, near the entrance, because my uncle, my godfather, he served during World War II. So it's a beautiful facility. And thanks to my dad's service, my mom's all taken care of with TRICARE for life.
Yes.
So he was forward thinking. When I was 17, he was like 40 or something, and he joined the reserves as a hobby because he was prior service in the 60s before he met my mom. And he did his, 4 plus, 4 in the Ready Reserves. And so then he thought, well, how about, retirement and a hobby and some, community service and all this kind of stuff. So he was like, hey, why don't you join my unit? You're 17. You could go to basic training and then finish high school and then go to advanced training. And we can go to drills together every month. It'll be our father-son activity. And at first I was like, dude, have you heard of fishing?
Yeah.
Go-karts maybe? There's plenty of other father-son activities. But so he stayed in, and I did my time. I would have fared better if I'd been in the regular Army. I don't do well with transitions, so I had a hard time having one foot in the military and one foot in the civilian world, because I was all into the military life.
Yeah, you're very focused. You focus on something. That's cool.
When things aren't focused, when I can't focus and when things aren't regimented, I have a hard time. So I had a hard time with the lackadaisical attitude in the reserves. But all those men had already served their time in active duty, and I hadn't, just for training. So I would have been better off but still, I'm proud of my service.
Yeah.
And I think all the skills I learned at basic, DLI, Military Intelligence School at Fort Huachuca, all my interactions with Marines and airmen and sailors from, while serving in the inter-service schools like DLI, gave me a lot of good mentorship and a lot of good life skills and life lessons that I applied to my career.
So now, Jeff, were you a 96 Charlie or 97 Echo?
I was 97 Echo.
All right, so I'm one old school notch below you, because I went through Huachuca when it was still 96 Charlie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I think it's like 37 Mike or something.
Yeah, 37 Foxtrot. Yeah, 37
Foxtrot.
Mike.
Yeah,
37 Mike.
I went back to Huachuca.
37 Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of years ago I went, and it's one of the bases where you can go to the guardhouse and wait in line and do a face-to-face interview in real time, and like in 5 minutes they finish a background check and they give you a day pass. All
right, so we got to go to commercial now, Paul and Jeff, and you want to hold on, and we'll come back to you after the commercial.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Want to read some action-packed, exciting pulp fiction? Read the works of Michael Tooman, now featuring the international crime thriller, I Married a Bot Madam. Available on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle editions. The paperback is also available at other book retailers. Check out Michael Tooman's webpage at Scilink.net. That's Papa Sierra Yankee Lima India November Kilo .November Echo Tango.
Join your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvid on our weekly radio hour, Chief Guard of the Republic, where we talk about all things national security, defense, personal security, safety, and dealing with law enforcement situations. Call in 847-931-1410. Ask us questions. We will get you answers. Every week, Saturday, noon to 1 on 1410 AM WRMN Elgin. Streaming on WRMN1410.com. Chat with us on WRMN's YouTube live channel.
Your hometown radio station since 1949. We are WRMN AM 1410, Elgin time, 1 o'clock.
Townhall.com. I'm Bob Agnew in Washington. A weak jobs report is not playing well at the White House.
President Donald Trump on Friday ordered the firing of the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, hours after a government report showed that hiring had slowed down significantly over the past 3 months. The Bureau of Labor Statistics on Friday morning reported that the U.S. economy added just 73,000 jobs in July. It also said it had revised the May and June numbers, and they turned out to be lower than previously announced by more than 200,000 jobs. Donald Trump said the numbers were rigged to make him and Republicans look bad. Bill Alexander, Washington.
Meanwhile, George Williams reports the U.S. unemployment rate ticked up a bit, 0.1% last month.
The Labor Department reports an increase of 0.1% from 4.1 to 4.2%, where it's remained for the past 13 months. The department estimates the number of unemployed in the U.S. at some 7.2 million people. Earlier this week, Fed Chair Jerome Powell assessed the U.S. job market as stable.
The unemployment rate remains low, and the labor market is at or near maximum employment.
The report says the economy added 73,000 jobs, but also revised downward the previous 2 months of payroll statistics by 258,000, negating those previously reported gains. George Williams, Washington.
Senator Tom Cotton says it's ironic that Israel faces constant criticism from many in the Western media over its alleged failures to provide adequate nutrition in Gaza, given that the current war was sparked by a brutal attack by Hamas.
Israel really has no responsibility whatsoever to provide any kind of aid into Gaza. And the fact that they're doing so just proves that they always go the extra mile because they always face unique standards in the world.
Furthermore, Cotton told the Salem Radio Network that it is the Hamas terrorist group that is prohibiting the distribution of aid inside Gaza. More from townhall.com.
Most people have no idea there's an invisible gap in their home's protection. This invisible threat is house stealing. Con artists pick a house. They transfer the deed of this house into their name by obtaining the forms, using the fake IDs, and filing the paperwork with proper authorities. Now they own the home. Protect your home from this invisible gap. Check on your home's title right now at HomeTitleLock.com. Be sure to use promo code RADIO and they will send you a complete title scan of your home's title. And your first 30 days of triple lock title protection is free. HomeTitleLock.com.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that is MediShare. Maybe you've heard joining MediShare can save families up to $500 a month, and obviously that's a big deal, but they like it too, especially being part of something that reflects their values instead of working against them. So yeah, really, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. Find out more. Call 833-34-BIBLE. That's 833-34-BIBLE.
Incorrect altitude readings on the Army helicopter that collided with a passenger plane over Washington, D.C. in January apparently contributed to the aircraft getting too close. NTSB Chairwoman Jennifer Hamady says there should be no differences on altitude calculations.
I am concerned. There is a possibility that what the crew saw was very different than what the true altitude was. We did testing in May that shows concerns with the altimeters, the barometric altimeters on the UH-60 Lima. So we are concerned, and it's something we have to continue to investigate.
Air traffic controllers warned about the hazards of helicopter traffic presented years before the crash. It's a very complicated set of flight patterns right around the nation, one of the busiest airports in the nation's capital. You'll find breaking news and analysis at townhall.com. Lisa Dwyer reports on deadly flooding this week along the East Coast.
A 13-year-old boy in Maryland died after getting trapped in a storm drain during heavy rainfall and flooding on the East Coast. A Mount Airy Volunteer Fire Company spokesperson says kids were playing in the rain Thursday when floodwaters rushed into the area. Areas in New York and New Jersey saw heavy rain flood sections of the subway and commuter rail routes. The National Weather Service is warning that more storms might bring flash and urban flooding to the northern, mid-Atlantic, and southern New England area through Friday night. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Energy drinks that mistakenly contained vodka are being recalled in more than a half dozen states. High Noon is recalling 2 production lots of High Noon Beach Variety packs because some contain cans with vodka inside that were mislabeled as Celsius Astro Vibe energy drink. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Do you own an annuity, either fixed rate, indexed, or variable? Are you paying high fees and getting low returns? If so, Annuity General would like you to have this free book to learn the pitfalls and mistakes of buying an annuity. The Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers contains the little-known truths about annuities. like how to help reduce your fees and increase retirement income. And it's free. That's right, free. As a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report just for calling. We researched over 1,000 annuities and summarized rates and benefits from financially strong insurers. You get annuity do's and don'ts for baby boomers and the annuity rate report, both absolutely free for calling Annuity General today. Hurry, supplies are limited. Call now.
800-760-1845. 800-760-1845. 800-760-1845. That's 800-760-1845.
Six bayonets, comrades, we're back for the second half of the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with your co-hosts Mike Tuman and Paul Burvid. Hey, Jeff, you still there?
Well, that's the Saturdays where you get the second hour, huh?
Yeah. Because of the ball game, the White Sox. So they have the White Sox streaming on 1410 AM, and of course they have the Saturday games. And some of their other radio shows were getting superseded by that. So there's kind of some dead air time. So they allowed me, which I think is nice, to fill in the extra hour. It is,
cool.
Keeping up a good conversation here for 2 hours and keeping people interested is kind of a challenge. So Jeff, you are probably I'm kind of left, right of center on most things. Most things, like I'm saying. And Jeff, you're probably the opposite of me in a lot of political things. Not that this is a political show, but I want to ask.
I would say left to center. So I'm center, but more to the left, and then on a lot of issues, but definitely not. I'm not a granola cruncher, as they say.
No. Even though you could easily fit in with a whole group of them and never be noticed.
Right.
Yeah. What do you think of only people that have served in the military for whatever reason, National Guard, Reserve, Navy, Army, Air Force, Space Force, even the Coast Guard, and what do you think of them being the only ones being allowed to vote?
Well, I think that would be the whole purpose of them going to war is to protect our way of life. So I don't know, to take away some of the rights is kind of like
them being allowed to vote. I'm not saying not allow them to vote. I mean, they're the only ones to get to vote.
Right, but the whole thing is no, I'm against that because they are because then okay, here's what I feel. All right, let's say one of the rights of a citizen is to vote, right? And to have freedom of speech and to vote for our elected officials and to be a free country. When our soldiers go to war, they are defending that right. So they'd be fighting to defend that right, but now we're gonna take that right away that all the other previous generations have gone to war for.
Okay, I get you.
Yeah. Right. So, but I'll take it one step further and find a good compromise. Only people who study and graduate from a civics course should be like if you have the right to drive at 16, and you have the right to vote at 18.
No, you don't have a right to drive. You never have a right to drive. You only have a privilege.
Okay. Well, it's a law. Okay, you have legal right to drive. Yeah. So all kids, take driver's ed for the most part and learn the rules of the road. I think the problem is we don't teach civics in our country, so we don't have, I think you could achieve the same outcome with your proposal is if we just have an educated electorate. That's the first step.
Yes. And Jeff, what you're saying, in the early days of our country, you had to have a certain education level to vote. You had to prove that you were educated, that you can read and write and count in order to vote. because it was, back then, a lot of the population was not literate. All right. So, but they had a voting test, and they had that even after the Civil War, where you had to, be able to read and write, or they wouldn't let you vote. And then they had a poll tax to make sure you had enough money, and you had to be a landowner. Yeah, but you are absolutely, in order to graduate from the eighth grade, junior high, in order to graduate junior high, get into the big high school, I had to pass a Constitution test. Same thing when I graduated from high school. I had to pass a Constitution test. Then they dropped that requirement. I guess it was unconstitutional. But you're absolutely, you know what one class I never took in the military was? They taught me all sorts of other things, just all sorts of, what I call the nonsense, the stuff that, all this cultural awareness stuff. I never took a civics class. They never they never sat me down and said, listen, there's your 3 branches of government. All right? Here's how this works. Here's how a law gets passed. I could teach that in an hour and get at least 10% of the class to totally understand it, right? But I was in for 38 years. Never got a civics class. And at the highest levels of the military, CW5, right? Up there, supposed to be on a high level like a colonel, right? And nope, nothing about civics. We had current events, we had some political nonsense and everything else, but nothing like some of these guys still didn't understand, the Electoral College. They still didn't understand the right of the states versus the federal government. They still didn't understand the difference between the National Guard and the reserves and all that stuff. And we're going 30 years in. I wholeheartedly agree with you, Jeff. What do you think, Paul? Should there be mandated civics test?
I think I had to take it, in 1973. I think that they should have to do it.
Yeah. Good idea.
And the new citizens have to take the citizenship test. So it's like, that make sure that, before we get to vote, just like when you're doing, different rites of passage, bar mitzvah, confirmation, high school graduation, college graduation, all this kind of stuff. It's just be a rite of passage for teenagers. And when, they're getting ready to turn 18 and get ready to vote, they take the test. Because nowadays it seems we're so divided as a nation that both sides, anytime they hear something they disagree with or something that goes against their cause or values, the go-to now is to label it as, fake news or propaganda, on both sides. And the thing is the best defense against demagoguery or propaganda or is an educated
populace,
because you can't curb the speech. Like, if I don't like what they're saying on Fox News, or I don't like what they're saying on Rachel Maddow, I can't get them off the air. Like I disagreed with Tucker Carlson on most issues, but I didn't want him to leave the air. It's our responsibilities as citizens to detect and to learn how to process BS when we hear it, not to squelch it. And so I think the dumber, I don't mean dumber like pejoratively, but like the less informed, the more ignorant people are of cultural and political issues, the more easily they're swayed.
Yes. And one of the things we try to do on this show, Jeff, is when we see that nonsense out there, the hyperbole of simple things, like, the hyperbole of Trump going to invade Panama, Trump going to invade Greenland, or whatever. There are a lot of hyperbole came out there. We try to put it in a layman's term, saying, no, this is the way the Constitution works. This is the powers that the president has to deploy troops. It falls under this and everything. So what the news media is there, what the legacy media out there loves to do is create a circus of fear. A circus of fear, because people want to listen to them now to see what's going to come up next. And if you have if you have a fearful electorate that's always afraid, you are a tyranny. That's it. You're tyrannizing people. All right? But scared sheep are easier to control than an elected thing. Here's an anecdote, all right? So when I was down in Haiti with PSYOPs, right? And now Haiti is as dirt poor as you can get. It is really poor. But you know what they have down there? They have a grassroots education system where some lady in the village of mud huts and grass huts and everything, she sits there and for a couple hours a day, she educates kids to come to her place. They're writing in the dirt or whatever, you know? These kids are getting somewhat educated, you know, learn how to read and write. Some of the kids down there could speak Creole, French, Spanish, and English. They, you know, and they had a knowledge of this just from learning from other people. Well, one of the things that they didn't have was a lot of learning material, papers, pencils, or something. And so being in PSYOPs, I sent up a request for the area I was working. I wanted 10,000 copies of the Haitian Constitution written in French, Creole, and Spanish to deliver to the schools in Haiti. And I got back. You think that's bad, right? We could easily print that up, 10,000 copies of their Constitution, and pass them out to the schools, right, so the kids, they could pass them out to the teachers so the teachers could teach to the kids, because they didn't have books, they didn't have computers, they didn't have any of that. And you know what I got back? No, what? Not just no, but HE double hockey sticks. No, you can't have that, and we're not giving it out. I'm like, okay, because they don't want exactly what you said, Jeff, an educated populace on their own form of government. And the Haitian Constitution, written by educated Haitians, is a pretty solid piece of paper. The trouble is they just don't follow it.
Yeah.
So yeah, education, civics classes and everything. Now, here's another one. What do you think of people that refuse to register for the draft? Should they be allowed to vote?
No.
No. You see, we agree on something there.
Yeah.
And what's your reason for that?
Well, it's first of all, it's a law, right?
Yeah, it's a law. But, you know,
yeah,
one thing I learned in the ghetto, Jeff, is only obey the laws that apply to you.
Yeah. Well, then I would be an outlaw. Speaking of the Constitution, you guys started off the show talking about the Second Amendment.
Yes, we're all going to tie back because we're talking about who the people are. The people that are protected by the Second Amendment, are they the same people that are entitled to vote? And if you're not protected by the Second Amendment, should you be able to vote?
Right. So to bring this all around, one of the things my dad and I were doing in his later years, especially, was we would go to the firing range together. And my dad had his permit, and now in Ohio I don't need a permit, but I still, when I find time, I wouldn't carry unless I went to the training. I don't want that firearm army unless I go through all the training and everything.
Absolutely.
You know, yeah, because there's just so much you need to know. The thing is, a lot of people don't know. I wouldn't just try to become a lawyer. I wouldn't just become a doctor. Well, I wouldn't want to be responsible for a personal firearm until I knew how to use it correctly and all the legal ramifications and all the scenarios, and talk through the different scenarios and the ethics involved and the strategy involved and all the caveats and all that stuff that you learn from a good instructor over a course of 4 Saturdays.
Paul, do you think do you think Jeff is dead on?
Yes, absolutely.
Paul's
So here's the thing: is like we're using the analogy of an uninformed electorate. Okay, how about if we just take an uninformed public or untrained public?
An uninformed militia, untrained militia.
Right, well, yeah. What I don't understand is like how people can look at the Second Amendment. Like for me, Like, I know that if I want a handgun, and I might even go look at them today, I can get one. And I know that if all these, if they make the laws and rules even stricter, I will have no problem getting one. Because one, I know how to do paperwork. Two, I have no police record, and there's not a spot on my public record. Okay, so I have no fear. Okay, what I don't understand is we live in a free society, but you need 6 permits to paint your mailbox. Okay. You can't own a jet ski without, a permit, this and that, your fishing license, all this kind of stuff. We are up to our necks in red tape in this country. But when it comes to applying the same type of red tape to guns to make them safer, everybody starts talking about the Second Amendment. And I personally don't think guns should be harder to acquire and own by law-abiding citizens. In fact, I tend to believe that if I'm ever to be saved in a situation where somebody is firing in public, it's going to be an off-duty cop or veteran or somebody carrying, So I want my fellow citizens, like you who know how to use firearms, to be able to use their personal firearm in a public emergency, like a public shooting situation. So I'm not against private citizens carrying weapons.
Well,
but I don't understand how anybody can look at the Second Amendment and think that the right to bear arms, the arms referenced to in the 1700s, don't resemble the weaponry available now.
Yeah,
And
they
so
they didn't have televisions either. So you go back to the First Amendment.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is like these guys were, our Constitution was written by guys as brilliant and as enlightened as they were. They still went poo-poo in vases and threw it out the window.
Well, no, see, Jeff, back then, okay, so back then, and yes, we're in the early stages of telegraph, right? The very early stages of telegraph back then. Very early stages. It hadn't been around.
Before, not the 1700s, they'd have telegraph.
Before, what? Yeah, late 1700s they did.
They did?
Yeah. It was still,
it was 1800s.
it was, what? Yeah, 18. It became popular. It became popular.
Okay.
All right. But, all right, so these guys have seen, they're very educated. So they knew that, the earlier tribes of men, the Gauls and everything, they had metal axes, metal swords, knives, that the Egyptians had, the Bronze and Copper Age and everything. And they had seen firearms go from the blunderbusses of the 1600s to the rifled muskets in the late 1700s and the 18th century. So they knew that these things, that there's a progression, that there is a constant evolution of this stuff. So they didn't think that, the musket, no one's ever going to get anything better than a musket because this is the end all. They knew things were going to evolve to better quality, right? To more dangerous, to more lethal. All right, they knew these things evolved because you went from the bow and arrow to the blunderbuss to the rifled musket. All right, and then you had the horse pistols, and then you're down to smaller pistols, and then you have cannons, right? The old cannons fired rocks, and now you have exploding shells, right? So they knew that these things were evolving. So no, they probably didn't see in the future machine guns or caseless ammunition, electronically fired multiple barrel guns, but they did have multiple barrel cannons. They had puckle guns back then too, where the revolvers, they revolved the big cannons. So they knew that things were going to evolve. All right. They didn't write this because they didn't know that the things were going to evolve. And when it comes back to, again, all right, to go into a circle, not to make it a hard, that it should be more regulated, but it's for the militia, because we go back to the statement, all right, the statement, a well-regulated militia. That's the first thing it says in the Second Amendment. The first thing it mentions is a well-regulated militia. So when you put something up in first in English, unlike other languages, what's the most stressed concept in English is the first word of that sentence. The first phrase, right? A well-regulated militia. So that's it. They're stating that. That's the importance of them. And you're right. They were very educated. So they were educated in English in the way they were writing, right?
Right. Well, isn't a well-regulated militia also well-trained?
Well-regulated. Also, yes, they're well-trained because.
Right. So when I read the Second Amendment, all I see is that if you, I, and Paul wanted to start our own militia, as long as we went to militia school and took the training and got all the paperwork and registered, and then had our meetings and had our gun safety, that we could have our guns and we can have our militia and we can have an armory.
No, not true, because regulated.
Because I don't see
the word regulated here. The word regulated
here. Well,
here.
that is regulated. If we are recognized by the state as a militia.
Who regulates it? The state. So the state would have to recognize. Yes, you're right. If the state recognized us as a militia. Yes.
Right. So that's what I see. That that we have the right to form or join a militia, or to join a militia. And independent of the United States Army. I don't think it has a right that anybody can go.
No, you have to go with the definition of the militia back then. All right, so each militia, all right, the colonies had a militia.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
You're using a different definition. You're using more modern version, a more vulgar version of the term militia. Back in the day, in the 1600s, all right, when the New World here, the North America was being colonized. We talked about this at the beginning. Small villages needed to have their guys to protect the village, right? Those were the militia, all right? And they were regulated because you were mandated back then. Mandated. You had to, if you were between 16 and 60, you had to own a firearm, know how to use it. And where did you learn? You learned from your parents, your uncles, your older brothers. They taught you how to use this. The state didn't have a class. Your father taught you how to use it. If you didn't know how to use it, everyone laughed at you.
Point.
All right, wait, I'm going to finish this here, right?
Okay.
So you were mandated by the state. Now, when they come to when the states got together, right, under the Constitutions of Confederation, or Articles of Confederation, each state, right, each governor of the state under the Articles of Confederation, they had their own independent militia. So, like your militia from Virginia would not cross the border to go to Georgia, all right? They wouldn't do it. Or go to North Carolina, right? So Virginia wouldn't go to North Carolina. I'm pretty sure. Virginia, they wouldn't go in there because they're militia. All right, they belong to the governor. So they wouldn't go to North Carolina. North Carolina wouldn't go to South Carolina without South Carolina's permission. And same thing. But we did have one federal force. And wherever they went, whatever state they were in, the militia had to show up. All right, the militia had to show up. That was everyone. All right, so they would call the militia in. The militia would come in, fire their 2 volleys, and they would be okay to leave then. But that was the militia of the time. All right, of the time when this was written. Every man of fighting age every man between 16 and 60 in that state was required to have a firearm, all right, and to know how to use it. And when they were called to service, they had to show up. So it's like everyone. That's what the well-regulated militia, and they belong to the states. The federal government does not run any elections. They're all in our republic. They're all run by the states. All right. The federal government doesn't have an election.
Okay.
All right. So, they have some regulations, but the regulated militia means that the state regulates it. So it regulates the training, what type, that stuff. Being necessary to the security of free state, right? So if your people aren't willing to defend your country, do you have a country?
No.
And so it's necessary to have this militia that's going to defend the country. The right of the people to keep and bear arms, all right? Who are the people? We kind of discussed that, right? At the time, it was the educated landowners, all right? Now it's everyone. That thing is spread out, the definition is spread out. Shall not be infringed. So it doesn't matter what type of weapon. I got 5 minutes. What?
Right, but,
I hear the music come in, so I'm thinking.
Yeah, we gotta get going.
All right, so we got to go with the commercial, Jeff.
All right.
All right, you going to hang on?
Yeah.
All right, see you in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Them down, not to destroy, but to understand. Because if you don't see how the system works, you won't see when it's being manipulated or who's benefiting from it. Power belongs to those who know the rules, challenge the loopholes, and demand accountability. That starts with knowledge. That starts here. Join us weekdays from 4 to 6 p.m. as we uncover what's really happening behind the headlines so you can decide for yourself what's fair, what's broken, and what needs to change. A political talk show, breaking down the systems to build them up together. Right here, weekdays 4 to 6 on WRMN, the talk of the town.
Hi there, Tammy Scully here from Talk Time with Tammy and Friends. Join me and my sidekicks, Nancy and Becky, for valuable lifestyle tips and unique views and insights on interesting topics and everyday situations, providing nonstop fun and chuckles for all. Get the scoop on consumer news, deep dive on current events, and learn about the newest economic trends, from exercise and gardening to music, travel, recipes, sports, pets, real estate, media, and everything in between. And it's all sprinkled with a healthy helping of bad dad jokes and interesting fun facts to boot. Tune in Mondays through Thursdays from 2 to 4 p.m. for a little fun, frolic, and infotainment. Join us, won't you?
Did you get a call or message that mentioned Social Security that made you feel threatened or scared? That is not the Social Security Administration. Social Security will not threaten you, press you for personal information, or demand instant payment. Social Security does not accept payments by gift card, prepaid debit card, internet currency, or by mailing cash. Criminals use these forms of payment because they are hard to trace. Don't fall for it. Hang up, ignore them. Report this criminal activity to oig.ssa.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense. What's the best way to get rid of a timeshare that you don't want? Call the Timeshare Exit Hotline. We're a group of attorneys that help customers legally exit their timeshares. It's an easy process. We guarantee results or you pay nothing. Exit your timeshare today. Call now.
800-890-5957. 800-890-5957. That's 800-890-5957.
If you turned 65 recently like me, it's important you find a Medicare Advantage plan that gives you the coverage you're looking for. But finding one can be difficult. The best thing I did, and I suggest you do the same, is call a licensed insurance agent and let them walk you through your Medicare Advantage plan options. There are so many benefits you have access to, so make the call now and let the representatives explain everything to you. Our licensed insurance agents can offer you a variety of Medicare Advantage plans. Plus, the call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation to enroll. We're here to make it easy for you to select a Medicare Advantage plan that may work for your needs. Finding a Medicare Advantage plan can be easy if you do what I did. Make a quick call right now to learn more. Thank you.
800-433-3082. 800-433-3082. 800-433-3082. That's 800-433-3082.
Okay, we're back with Chief Guard of the Republic Radio Show with co-host Mike Tooman and Paul Burvid. And we got Jeff on the line. Jeff, the comedian radio on the radio. Jeff, when's your next show?
I'm joining a cruise ship on Wednesday down in Belize.
Belize?
I just got back from Alaska cruise. I'm home for a week. I was supposed to come up and visit you in Chicago. It didn't work out. It took me like 3 days to get home from Alaska due to all kinds of flight problems.
So what's this cruise line?
Carnival Cruise Line.
So if if you're going to go on a Carnival cruise, make sure that Jeff Shaw is the entertainment director. Are you going to be the entertainment director or just comedy?
No, I'm back to straight stand-up comedy since 2017. But my website is comedianjeffshaw.com, and all my dates, all my clubs, all my ships, every show I do is on my website, on my tour dates page.
Great. And you know what? You can see some of Jeff's stuff. And Jeff is very highbrow, you know, but the thing about Jeff, which I've noticed of other comedians, because my daughter was doing some stand-up, Jeff can read a room. So when you go into a room with Jeff there, you know you're going to get laughs because he can read the room and you will get his comedy.
Yeah. And the thing is like, first and foremost, you're there to entertain people. So, and the more skill you have and the more experience the more you can do that and retain your integrity and also kind of like talk about the things you want to talk about. But there's a way, like, you know, there's a way for me even to get very mild political points of view, or I don't say political, more like, you know, socially conscious points of view on cruise ships where political stuff doesn't work because it's all about connecting with the audience. And there's a big difference between preaching at an audience and inferring that their views are stupid and making fun of what they think, which a lot of political comics do. And as opposed to, you know, treating issues from a humanistic point of view, you know, like I do jokes about how, like, almost all of my friends and relatives are on the conservative side because, well, they're successful. And, you know, but the thing is like I have so many, you know, they're at higher tax brackets, so, you know, but I make it a point. To me, people are more important than politics. My friends are more important to me than my friends' views. This is a free country, and I have no desire to control how other people think. To me, that is, when you're living in a totalitarian or autocratic society, is, you know, part of the price of admission to our country is the price of freedom is that you have to afford that freedom to knuckleheads you disagree with.
Yeah, and you also got to be able to mule like 20 kilos of fentanyl under a tunnel into Arizona.
Yeah. I got an app that handles that now. So like one of the jokes I do is how, like, when I don't talk politics with my conservative friends and relatives, I just go to their beautiful homes, eat their expensive steaks, drink their expensive craft beer, swim in their pools, and keep my mouth shut because I'm a Democrat and I don't let politics get in the way of free stuff.
Okay. All right, Jeff, I'm going to get back to Paul now. All right?
All right, but I just wonder, I had a question about your point real quick.
All right.
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying about the militia, okay? But my point is that America today and the widespread of gun violence and the problems with illicit guns and all that don't match the time back when the Constitution was written. And so to me, it's like it's totally silly. Everybody should have the right to have a firearm, but to not make sure that people take tests or that we really get smart with gun laws and keeping out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them just because people decry, Second Amendment, is just as silly as saying we shouldn't have rules regulating interstate trucking commerce because back then we didn't have rules against donkeys.
Yeah. I agree with your point. Your point there. Absolutely, people should be educated. Back in the founding fathers' days, 1775ish and everything, owning a firearm, you just didn't, go down to the corner store, with 25 whatever extra money you have and get a firearm. That was, unless you were rich, that was a tool. People didn't have as much disposable income. You had to pick whether you're going to eat today or whatever. So if you didn't need a firearm, you didn't get a firearm. And if you're mandated to have a firearm, that's a definite household expense. So people weren't just going out and like buying a lot of that stuff because you're right. Back then, you weren't in as much danger unless there was an invader. Yes, things got, but as soon as you go further to the frontier, there's where it becomes more necessary. But I think the founding fathers would always also be appalled at, Paul, you mentioned, what name did you give him? Donnie, right?
Yeah.
The kid. All right. So the founding fathers came to the voting booth, voting up there, and they saw Donnie and all these unfortunately, mentally challenged people standing up there and voting, they would freak. The Founding Fathers would absolutely freak at that.
They would.
All right? They'd be like, holy cow. No wonder, you know. So, and what the Founding Fathers didn't anticipate either was that the block captain or the precinct captain showing up at the nursing home on the mail day where all the mail-in ballots get mailed in, showing up and the clerk handing the mail-in ballots over to the precinct captain, and the next day the precinct captain comes and they're all filled out with another envelope for the clerk, you know? Oh my God, yeah. Well, everyone, 100% voter turnout at the nursing home, again. Hey, everyone voted the same way. And, you know, that's unfortunately, that they wouldn't see that happening either. You know, that would freak them out. Mm-hmm. You know, if you can't walk to the poll and cast your vote, then you know your vote ain't worth it. That's what they would.
Right,
I think that's what they would think.
That's why I think our Constitution should be something that we modify over every certain number of years with that we modify legally through through the correct process. I don't know what that process is.
It's called the Constitutional Convention.
All right, it's the convention because they're not the Founding Fathers. The people who are alive in the 1700s aren't living on our society or running our society now. We are. Yes. And so it's 200 years in the future. So we need a document that grows with the times.
It does.
It does. Not when it comes to an issue like guns.
You know, they can repeal the Second Amendment anytime they want. It just requires a constitutional amendment to. Okay,
right,
the 15th. What was Paul? Which amendment was it? The 18th Amendment banned liquor, right?
The 19th.
19th Amendment.
I think it's the 21st, something like that.
Okay, so they banned liquor. The 19th Amendment banned it all. Then the 21st Amendment brought it back. They repealed the 19th Amendment. All right, so we have a process called the Constitutional Convention. All right. And it takes 2/3 of the senators to vote to call in a constitutional convention. But it takes when you have an amendment to the Constitution, it has to pass, and then it has to be approved by what I think one of our first shows was on this too. But
yeah, like 3/5 of the states.
3/5 of the states have to approve that amendment. Then becomes the law of the land. And then the Supreme Court has to vote, not based on case law, because there'll be no case law on the amendment, and then they'll have to vote on that. They can't. The Supreme Court cannot find an amendment to the Constitution unconstitutional. They can't do that.
Right.
Right? They judge on the Constitution. So if the amendment goes in saying the Second Amendment is null and void, that firearms can only be owned, let's say, by the state. They do like Australia. They take all the firearms away from everyone, right? Or in Great Britain. It's all gone. Well, let's just put it that way, that they passed that amendment, right? And then that's it. That's it. No, it's a federal law. It's against federal law to have the firearm then. Because, bam, they passed the amendment, right? And that unless they pass another amendment repealing that and reinstating the Second Amendment. Right, so there is a process. The U.S. Constitution is a growing document. It is a living document. It's just very difficult, right, to get it changed because, and that's with just cause. The Founding Fathers intended that it be very difficult to change that because then every time you have a switch in the direction of the wind, right, it'll get changed again. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, you have no security in the government. That's why parliamentary politics, when there's a vote of no confidence and they got to have elections again, those can happen every week if they want.
It tends to destabilize the continuity of both the government and the laws and things like that. That's why they wanted to make it more of a thought out and considerate and deliberate process so that we're not twisting in the wind, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
and no one will. The Second Amendment would never go up for a review because the ambiguity that I see in it, and other people of like mind see in it, proponents of like that ambiguity. I mean, because they look at it and they see it says right there, the right to bear arms. I look at it; that has nothing to do with a 19-year-old who just threatened to kill everyone at his school having the right to go over to buy a gun without doing a background.
Okay, so now you're going into something about who the people are, right? Because it goes the right of the people. All right. Now you have to define who are the people that the founding fathers were thinking of, right? And when they're thinking, like, again, they were thinking of the white male, right? The white male landowner that could read and write, all right? Landowner that could read and write. That was the people to them. Now that is expanded. Also contracted a little, because if you commit, this is my personal view here. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, and but if you commit a felony, that is telling society that you no longer follow the rules of polite society, that you're just going to commit this felony. All right. So you have separated yourself from society, saying, I'm better than society. I'm going to do what I want. You are in my opinion, when you commit those felonies, those serious crimes, all right, you commit that serious crime, you have separated yourself from the people, so the Constitution no longer covers you. You are a felon. But a lot of states have went back and said, well, as long as you served your time, then we'll give you the right to vote back, and you are considered one of the people again, except in this case when it comes to firearms, because if you're a convicted felon, you can no longer have the firearms unless you appeal to get that conviction expunged, so like it never happened, or get a pardon.
Illinois just passed a law that allows low-level
nonviolent felonies.
To get their rights now.
Any felony is a violence.
I know.
Right.
And it's violence. It's a fiduciary felony. It's violence because it costs the entire society. Right? You're ripping off society. You're not playing fair. Any felony, but what they're doing is they're catering to the fringe groups, to that 2% group that's going to keep them in power, because they're always going to have their base, no matter what. Honestly, these guys can. They can kill bunny rabbits on television in front of everyone, rip their heads off in front of everyone, and the base, whether right or left, is going to vote for them regardless. It's absolutely going to vote for them regardless. They don't care. They are narrow-visioned. They're wearing blinders. That's it. Well, he must have had a good reason for doing that. They don't realize he's just a psychopath. Right? But he's their party, so that's it. That's their guy. They're going to root for him, like football, teams. So,
yeah, well, it sounds like you agree with me. I think what it is, I've
in some ways, Jeff, absolutely, in some ways, but
yeah, because there's a lot of people that say that absolutely no restrictions. Like someone gets on parole, they should be able to buy a gun because of the Second Amendment. Like that. That's what I'm against. These people who are think that there should be no restrictions because of the Second Amendment, and those are the people that I'm kind of directing my point of view in. Again,
I hear you 100%. Except we live in a state where that's been the law for over 50 years, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, we have the highest crime rates.
It doesn't work in New York. It doesn't. It relates to common sense, okay? But we've had the most restrictive gun laws in Illinois. We're one of the only states where you have to get pre-certified to even touch a gun, and then once you get pre-certified, they check all this stuff. It doesn't work. It's never going to work because, for one, there's too big of a population. people, can understand that, as my friend says, they change their name, they give you a phony social security number, and then we've got it to where now we give background checks. We go to the state police. It doesn't work, and it's not going to work. There's going to be no foolproof method. Okay. And then there are resources available if somebody is off their rocker or if somebody's not supposed to have it, and then they do enforce that.
Is Hunter Biden in prison?
No, and he got pardoned.
So I don't think it's a matter of all the laws that are passed, because you can pass all the laws in the world. We have a lot of laws in Illinois. Guess what? They're not enforced. All right?
And they don't work.
You get 10 years extra if you do a crime with a gun. Well, first thing they do is throw out the gun charge, because they know that that's a mandatory sentencing. They know the judge has got to give them 10 years. So then they plea him out to 2 years on an armed robbery. Apparently, the guy was armed with nothing because there was no gun charge on it.
This is the last statute book that I got, okay, when I was working, okay? It's about the size of a huge Bible. When this thing came into effect, it was the Model Penal Code of 1963. Was like a pamphlet size. There's no reason to keep adding laws. We don't enforce them. And stuff that we add laws to are already covered.
And then we regulate it. We have to fund regulator authorities on these laws that we pass. We have to. Okay, here's a good one, right? I call them feel-good laws. They do nothing. They just make someone feel good. So rape cases, right? DNA. And I did a lot of these on the Midnights and Violent Crimes, right? You would go get the rape kit and you would submit it, and you would submit it to have it tested for DNA and everything else. And it would go to the crime lab, to the state of Illinois crime lab. And it's the black hole. It's gone. You sent it there. It's never going to be touched again. God knows where it went. They may have just thrown it in a burner, right? But then the governor had passed a law saying all these things will be tested in 90 days by law. But they don't fund the state crime lab to do the testing. They have the people there. So, yay, we passed a law. It should be tested within 90 days so that we can get this guy before he rapes 400 other children, right? Because you'll have his DNA and it's matched to something. No, they passed a good feel-good law, but they never enforced it. The governor's not going to come in with the state police and lock up the director of the crime lab for not processing these things when he doesn't have the people to process them, because they didn't fund them for the people to process. It's the good idea fairy in the Army. I got this great idea, but then you don't staff it and then you don't fund it. So what great idea is it?
Right.
And the other thing I know 100% is every one of these shootings is in a gun-free zone. Every one of them. Every one of them. Criminals don't follow the law. I have a friend who's in private practice now, who left the government, tells me all of his cases recently, rich guys, poor guys, everything, they all have Glock switches. That's a federal offense. Somebody got him. They mailed him from China. China did this to destabilize our country. People are buying them for $200 for a $2 piece of plastic. And everybody, I've got me a Glock. I got me a switch. I got me a machine gun. The National Firearms Act, machine guns. You can defeat it for $5. They don't work. And it's got to be that we start, instead of giving a guy a conviction and letting him out in 18 months, if you give him a conviction, let him out in 20 years, and then he does it again and you charge him federally, and he's 70 when he gets out, we won't have it anymore. But we don't do that.
So, Paul, what did I say about the ghetto? What's the mantra there? Only obey the laws that apply to you.
Right.
That apply to you. Well, that don't apply to me. I'm rich. Right. That don't apply to me because I'm a criminal already. I shouldn't have a gun to begin with.
Right.
But when you say they don't work, I mean, I'd say that it does. I would say that maybe it doesn't solve the problem completely, and enough things get to the crack that it's still a big danger. But I mean, how many more things? Like how many more people will get access? Like the fact that people who shouldn't have access to legal firearms still do means that the laws, aren't working. But if you took the laws away, there would be a lot more. The laws have to be.
No, you have to enforce the laws that are on the books. These are feel-good laws. These are laws they put on the books and never enforce. All right.
Oh, so that's why you're saying they're not working.
They're never enforced.
Because we don't make them work. We just pass new laws.
It's a feel-good thing.
Pass new laws on top of new laws, restricting rights.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
but if we followed the law as it was written, if we followed what it used to be called the UUW law as it came out in 1963, okay, there would be a lot of people in jail now forever because they would be 3-time felons. They would be We don't do that. We give them 18 months probation, then they get 24, and then they get a year or 2 in jail. That person now at the third offense should be looking at federal life. But we don't do that. And we haven't done that. We didn't do it in 63, 64, 65. And if Uncle Roscoe's in jail for life, Leo, the nephew's not going to do that because he doesn't want to be eating, like sausages and peppers with Roscoe in Stateville. But we don't do that.
So one of these good feel-good laws that came up was locking up your firearms, right? Which you should do, you absolutely should do. And there's really smart people that don't even lock them up. And I'm like, it bewildered me. But some 13-year-old, finds his uncle's gun. 13, not 2, not 6, 13, all right? 13, finds his uncle's gun, playing around with it, blows his brains out. And they're saying, oh, it's a tragic accident. I'm like, okay, why isn't uncle in prison for negligent homicide for leaving that gun out? All right? Because it's a 13-year-old. He's not of the age of reason according to the law, so he shouldn't have access to the firearm. You have the firearm as a person, as a reasonable human person. You are supposed to take active care of that. I could have dogs. Nothing. I could have vicious dogs, right? And I just let them run and they kill someone, right? Well, that's negligent homicide on my part. It's not a terrible accident. It's negligence on my part. It's negligence with the gun in the open. But they don't charge the guy because that isn't the metric, not metric, what do you call it? The visuals that they want when they're going.
It's not the demographic that they want to go after.
So it's just a terrible accident. So if we make this law that they got to lock it up, knowing this guy will never lock up that gun. But now they come into my house on something unrelated. I don't even have children there or anything. And they see a gun out in the open that I was cleaning and they charge me with not having it locked up.
I see.
The law he just signed is, I've taught over 7,000 people firearms in my classes. And the law he just signed has been a federal law for the last 40 years. He didn't do anything that wasn't already a law. The first thing I do is show the federal pamphlet. You got a kid in the house, you got to have it locked up. And then he goes and he makes it one step further for everybody.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Jeff, for calling in. Great show.
Hey,
great answer.
The 80th anniversary of the atomic bomb this week. It's a date to remember and contemplate.
All right. Tune in next week for Chief Guard of the Republic.
Take care. Have a good week.
Great show.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.